I stood at the edge of our family cemetery, watching them lower Mom's casket into the rich Iowa soil she'd worked for 60 years. The autumn wind carried the scent of harvest corn across the 100-acre farm that had been in our family for 3 generations. My brother Marcus stood across from me, his expensive suit a stark contrast to my worn jeans and flannel shirt. After the service, we gathered at the farmhouse where I'd grown up. The lawyer, Mr. Peterson, cleared his throat and opened Mom's will. My heart hammered as he read the provisions. The house would go to Marcus, the barn and equipment to Marcus, the fertile farmland to Marcus. And to Sarah, he continued, your mother leaves her personal effects and the contents of the attic. Marcus chuckled, not even trying to hide his satisfaction. Looks like you got what you deserved, little sister. Some old clothes and dusty junk. I felt the blood drain from my face. After everything I'd done, staying home to care for Mom through her illness, while Marcus lived his corporate life in Chicago, working the farm when she could no longer manage it alone, this was my inheritance. The relatives offered sympathetic glances before dispersing. Marcus patted my shoulder with false sympathy. Don't worry, Sarah. I'll let you stay in the guest room until you figure things out. Maybe a month or 2. I nodded numbly, unable to speak. The farm that had raised me, shaped me, where I'd planned to raise my own children someday, it was gone. As Marcus drove away in his BMW, I climbed the creaking stairs to the attic, wondering what exactly Mom had left me up there. The attic smelled like mothballs and memories. Afternoon sunlight streamed through a small window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the stale air. I pulled the chain on the bare bulb, casting harsh shadows across boxes and forgotten furniture. Mom's personal effects were more extensive than I'd expected. Cedar chests filled with quilts she'd sewn, photo albums chronicling our family history, and boxes of correspondence dating back decades. I sat cross-legged on the dusty floor, opening the first photo album. There I was at 5, gap-toothed and grinning, sitting on Dad's lap on the old John Deere. Marcus at 8, already showing signs of the restlessness that would eventually drive him to the city. Mom and Dad's wedding photo, both looking impossibly young and hopeful. A wave of grief hit me. Mom had been the anchor of this place, the one who taught me to read the sky for weather, to test soil with my fingers, to understand the rhythms of planting and harvest. She'd never said much about inheritance or the future. She wasn't one for sentimental speeches. But I'd assumed. God, how I'd assumed. I'd turned down a scholarship to agricultural school to stay and help. I'd ended my engagement to Tom because he wanted to move to Des Moines. Everything I'd sacrificed had been for this farm, for the future I thought we were building together. Now Marcus would probably sell it to developers. The thought made my stomach twist. Our great-grandfather had cleared this land by hand. Our family was buried in the small cemetery behind the barn. And it would all disappear under suburban sprawl because I'd been foolish enough to believe that dedication mattered more than birthright. I spent the next 3 hours methodically going through boxes. Mom had kept everything, report cards, birthday cards, even grocery lists written in her careful script. My throat tightened as I realized how much of my own life was documented here. School awards, 4-H ribbons, photos of me showing prize-winning cattle at the county fair. In the 4th box, I found something that made me pause. A manila envelope marked "Important Documents Safe" in Mum's handwriting. Inside were birth certificates, social security cards, and insurance papers. But at the bottom, my fingers touched something unexpected, another will. My hands shook as I unfolded the document. The date was 6 months more recent than the will Peterson had read. My eyes scanned the legal language, heart pounding as I read the new provisions. This will left everything to me. The house, the land, the equipment, everything. But there was more. A letter in Mom's handwriting was attached. "My dearest Sarah," it began, "if you're reading this, then you've found what I hoped you would." Marcus pressured me to change my will, threatening to put me in a nursing home if I didn't leave him the farm. I pretended to agree, but I made sure you'd find the truth. The farm belongs to the one who loves it, who understands it. That was always you, sweetheart. Don't let anyone tell you different. The original will is hidden where we used to play house as children. You'll know where to look. Fight for what's yours. I pressed the letter to my chest, tears streaming down my face. Mom hadn't forgotten me. She'd protected me the only way she knew how, where we used to play house as children. The memory hit me like a physical blow. The old oak tree behind the barn, the one with the hollow trunk where Mom and I used to have pretend tea parties when I was small. She'd help me arrange my tiny tea set on a wooden crate, and we'd sit in the shade talking about everything and nothing. I stumbled down from the attic, nearly tripping in my haste. The late afternoon sun was already casting long shadows across the farmyard as I ran toward the barn. The oak tree stood where it always had, ancient and solid, its trunk scarred by decades of weather and time. The hollow was still there, though smaller than I remembered from my childhood perspective. I reached inside, fingers probing the dark space until they touched plastic. A wrapped bundle emerged, protected from moisture and insects. Inside was another copy of the real will, along with a second letter from Mom. This one was shorter, but just as devastating. Sarah, Marcus brought that lawyer friend of his from Chicago. They thought I was getting confused, that I wouldn't notice they'd switched documents. But I've been sharp right up until the end, honey. I hid copies of everything. There are witnesses to the real will, Doc Miller and Martha Henderson from church. They'll testify if needed. Don't let Marcus steal what's rightfully yours. You're stronger than you know. I sank to my knees beside the old tree, the weight of realization crushing down on me. Marcus hadn't just inherited the farm through favoritism or old-fashioned thinking about male heirs. He'd manipulated our dying mother, used her illness against her, committed fraud. The betrayal cut deeper than losing the inheritance ever could have. I spent that evening making copies of everything, the real will, Mom's letters, even photographing the hiding place in the oak tree. My laptop sat open on the kitchen table as I researched Iowa inheritance law. The fraudulent will could be contested, but I'd need solid proof and good legal representation. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Hope you're packing. I've got a realtor coming to look at the place tomorrow." Already, he couldn't wait even a week after the funeral to start dismantling our family legacy. I set the phone aside without responding and continued my research. By midnight, I'd found what I needed. A law firm in Cedar Rapids specialized in inheritance disputes. Their website mentioned several cases similar to mine, wills that had been altered or replaced without the deceased's consent. I bookmarked their contact information and tried to sleep, but rest wouldn't come. I walked through the house Mom had called home for 40 years, touching familiar surfaces, memorizing details, the kitchen table where she'd taught me to snap green beans, the living room where we'd watched old movies together, the porch where she'd sit in her rocking chair, watching the seasons change across the fields. Dawn was breaking when I finally called Dr. Miller. He'd been Mom's physician and friend for over 30 years. His voice was gravelly with sleep when he answered. "Doc, it's Sarah. I need to ask you something important about Mom's will." There was a pause. Then, "I was wondering when you'd call. Your mother made me promise to tell the truth if anyone ever asked. That will Peterson read wasn't the one she signed in my presence." Relief flooded through me. "Will you testify to that?" "Absolutely. Martha Henderson will too. We both witnessed the real one. Your mother was sharp as a tack that day, Sarah. She knew exactly what she was doing." Marcus arrived at 8 o'clock sharp, bringing with him a blonde realtor in a red suit who immediately started taking photos and measurements. I watched from the kitchen window as they walked around the property, the woman pointing and scribbling notes. When they came inside, Marcus barely acknowledged me. "Sarah, this is Jennifer Walsh. She specializes in agricultural properties. Jenny, this old farmhouse could be updated or torn down, whatever the buyer prefers. Jennifer nodded enthusiastically. The location is perfect for subdivision development. We could fit 30 houses on this acreage, maybe 40 if we're creative with the layout. Something inside me snapped. Get out! Marcus turned, eyebrows raised. Excuse me? I said get out, both of you, now. He laughed, that same condescending sound I'd heard at the funeral. Sarah, I know this is hard, but you need to accept reality. This is my property now. You're here on my sufferance. I stood up slowly, pulling the manila envelope from behind me on the counter. Actually, Marcus, we need to talk. Alone. Something in my voice must have warned him. He sent Jennifer to wait in her car, then turned back to me with irritation. What's this about? I don't have time for dramatics. This is about fraud. I laid the real will on the kitchen table. This is about you manipulating our dying mother. This is about the fact that you stole my inheritance. The color drained from his face as he recognized the document. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he grabbed for the papers. Where did you find this? I pulled them back. Does it matter? What matters is that I have it, along with Mom's letters explaining what you did. Dr. Miller and Martha Henderson witnessed this will, Marcus. They'll testify. You can't prove anything, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. I can prove everything. The question is, what are you going to do about it? The law office of Hartwell Klein and Associates occupied the top floor of a restored historic building in Cedar Rapids. I sat across from Amanda Klein, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s who specialized in estate litigation. The real will and Mom's letters were spread across her mahogany desk. This is a clear case of elder fraud and document forgery, Amanda said after reviewing everything. Your brother's actions constitute multiple felonies. We can not only contest the fraudulent will, but pursue criminal charges if you choose. I shifted in the leather chair. I don't necessarily want Marcus to go to prison. I just want what's rightfully mine. Understood, but criminal charges give us tremendous leverage in negotiations. Most people facing potential jail time become very reasonable very quickly. She leaned back. The evidence you've gathered is excellent. The witnesses are credible. Your mother's mental state was well documented by her physician. We have a strong case. How long will it take? If your brother fights it, 6 months to a year. If he's smart and settles quickly, we could resolve this in weeks. Amanda's smile was razor sharp. I suspect he'll choose the latter once he understands his position. We discussed fees and strategy. Amanda would contact Marcus's lawyer first, presenting the evidence and offering a settlement. If he refused, we'd file a formal contest of the fraudulent will and begin discovery proceedings. I left the office feeling lighter than I had since the funeral. For the first time in days, I could envision a future where the farm remained in the family, where Mom's wishes were honored. That evening, I called my ex-fiancé, Tom. We'd remained friends despite the breakup, and I needed someone to talk to who understood what the farm meant to me. Sarah, how are you holding up? It's complicated, Tom, really complicated. Tom arrived the next morning, driving the same pickup truck he'd had when we were engaged. 3 years hadn't changed him much. Still the steady, reliable man who'd wanted to build a life with me before I chose the farm over our relationship. Tell me everything, he said over coffee at the kitchen table. I laid out the whole story, the fraudulent will, Mom's hidden messages, Marcus's threats and manipulation. Tom listened without interruption, his jaw tightening as I described my brother's behavior. That son of a bitch, he finally said. Your mom was the kindest woman I ever met. To think he'd take advantage of her when she was sick. Amanda thinks we have a strong case, but Marcus won't go down without a fight. He's already talking about selling to developers. Tom was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the fields beyond the kitchen window. You know, I never understood why you chose this place over us. But seeing you now, seeing how you're fighting for it, I get it. This isn't just land to you. It's who you are. His words hit deeper than I'd expected. I'm sorry, Tom, for everything. Don't be. We both made our choices. He squeezed my hand. But I'm here now, and I'm going to help you fight this. That afternoon, Amanda called with news. She'd spoken to Marcus's Chicago lawyer, who was clearly rattled by the evidence. They'd requested a meeting to discuss settlement terms. He knows he's caught, Amanda said. The question now is whether his pride will let him admit it. I thought about my brother, always the golden child, the one who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes until he'd abandoned the family for his corporate career. Pride had always been his weakness. This was far from over. Marcus's lawyer called the meeting for Friday afternoon at a neutral location, the conference room of a bank in Cedar Falls. I arrived with Amanda, my stomach churning with nerves. Marcus sat across from us with his attorney, a thin man in an expensive suit who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. My client is prepared to make a generous offer, the Chicago lawyer began. He'll deed the farmhouse and 10 acres to Ms. Mitchell, plus $50,000. In exchange, she'll drop all claims against the will and agree not to pursue criminal charges. Amanda didn't blink. Your client will return all property fraudulently obtained per the terms of the legitimate will. That's not a settlement offer. That's returning stolen goods. Marcus finally spoke up. Sarah, be reasonable. I've put money into this place already. The roof needs work. The barn foundation is cracking. Take the house and the money. It's more than fair. Fair? I couldn't keep the anger out of my voice. You stole our mother's farm. You manipulated her while she was dying. And now you want me to thank you for giving me back scraps? I didn't steal anything. Mum made her choice. No, Marcus. You made her choice for her through threats and manipulation. I slid a copy of Mum's letter across the table. She was terrified of being put in a nursing home. You used that fear against her. His lawyer read the letter, and his face went pale. He whispered something to Marcus, who shook his head angrily. Amanda leaned forward. Gentlemen, let me be clear about your position. We have documentary evidence of fraud. We have witnesses. We have your client's own words about threatening Mrs. Mitchell with institutional care. If this goes to trial, your client will likely face criminal charges. The only question is whether you want to resolve this professionally or wait for the Iowa Attorney General to get involved. The room fell silent. Marcus stared at me across the table, his face flushed with anger and something else, maybe fear. Marcus stood abruptly, knocking his chair backward. This is bullshit, complete and utter bullshit. I'm not giving up a 100-acre farm because my sister found some fake documents in the attic. Marcus, his lawyer started, but my brother cut him off. No, I don't care what papers she's waving around. I don't care what witnesses she thinks she has. That farm is mine, legally and morally. I'm the oldest. I'm the son. That's how inheritance works in families like ours. The mask had finally slipped. This wasn't about Mom's wishes or legal documents. This was about Marcus's fundamental belief that he deserved everything simply by virtue of being born first and male. Families like ours, I stood too. What does that mean exactly? Traditional families. Families that understand that men handle the business while women handle the other things. He gestured vaguely. You should have married that mechanic and moved away like you were supposed to. Amanda's pen had never stopped moving, taking notes of everything Marcus said. His lawyer looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. So this isn't about Mom changing her mind, I said quietly. This is about you never believing I deserve to inherit in the first place. You're a woman, Sarah. You'll get married eventually. Take some man's name. Have his children. The farm would just be sold off anyway. At least I'll preserve the family legacy. By selling it to developers? His face reddened further. That's different. That's business. Amanda cleared her throat. Mr. Mitchell, I'd advise you to stop talking immediately. You're admitting to motive and demonstrating consciousness of guilt. But Marcus was beyond listening to legal advice. 28 years of resentment poured out, how he'd always hated the farm, hated the expectations, hated being stuck with the family burden. The inheritance wasn't about preserving anything. It was about finally getting something valuable out of the place that had trapped him his whole childhood. You want to know the truth, Sarah? Marcus's voice had gone cold, controlled again. Mom did ask me to put her in a nursing home, multiple times. She was scared of being a burden, scared of dying alone in that house. I'm the one who convinced her to stay, who arranged for the visiting nurses, who paid for the modifications to make the bathroom wheelchair accessible. I felt the blood drain from my face. This wasn't the story I'd expected. But every single time I visited, all she talked about was you. How proud she was of her Sarah, staying home to help, giving up college opportunities, sacrificing for the family. It made me sick. His hands clenched into fists. I'm the one who stayed in school, who built a career, who could have provided for her properly. But I was the disappointment because I didn't want to spend my life shoveling cow shit. Amanda continued taking notes, her expression carefully neutral. Marcus's lawyer had given up trying to control his client, so yes, I pressured her to change the will. I told her I'd earned the right to inherit. I'm the one who'll be executor, who'll handle her estate, who'll pay her final bills. Why should everything go to the daughter who'll probably just sell it anyway? But I wouldn't sell it, I whispered. You know I wouldn't. Do I? What happens when you finally get married, Sarah? What happens when your husband decides farming isn't profitable enough? What happens when you have kids and realize you can't afford to keep a 100-acre hobby farm? His questions hit home because they were the same ones that kept me awake at night. Farming was hard work for minimal profit. Most family farms in the area had already been sold to agribusiness or developers. Maybe Marcus was right that I was being naive about the realities. But then I remembered Mom's letter, her words about the farm belonging to the one who loves it. Love didn't guarantee success, but it was the foundation everything else was built on. That evening, Tom found me sitting on the porch swing where Mom used to rock. The autumn air was crisp, carrying the scent of harvested corn and the promise of winter. Stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Rough day? He asked, settling beside me. I told him about Marcus's outburst, his accusations, his questions about my ability to keep the farm running. Maybe he's right, Tom. Maybe I am being naive. About which part? All of it. The profitability, the sustainability, whether I can really make this work long term. I pulled my jacket tighter. What if I fight for this place and then lose it anyway in 5 years? Tom was quiet for a long moment. Can I tell you something I never said when we were together? I nodded. I was jealous of this place. Jealous of how much you loved it, how much it meant to you. I wanted to be the most important thing in your life, but I knew I wasn't. The farm was. He turned to face me. But watching you now, seeing how you're willing to fight for it, it's like watching someone fight for their soul. This place isn't just your inheritance, Sarah. It's who you are. His words settled something inside me that had been restless and uncertain. Marcus asked what I'd do when I get married, have kids. He acted like the farm was incompatible with having a real life. Maybe with some people it would be. But the right person would understand that loving you means loving this place too. Tom smiled sadly. I wasn't that person, but someone will be. Later that night, I called Amanda and told her to reject Marcus's settlement offer. We'd take this all the way to court if necessary. The farm wasn't just my inheritance. It was my identity, my future, my responsibility to the generations who'd worked this land before me. I was done compromising. The court hearing was scheduled for a Monday morning in November. I'd barely slept, but I felt calmer than I had in weeks. Amanda had prepared thoroughly, organizing our evidence into a compelling narrative of fraud and manipulation. Marcus arrived with his lawyer, both looking grim. The judge, a woman in her 60s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, listened carefully as Amanda presented our case. The fake will, Mum's hidden letters, the witness's testimony, it all painted a clear picture of what had happened. When Marcus's lawyer tried to argue that the fraud claims were unsubstantiated, Judge Patterson cut him off. "Counselor, your client threatened to institutionalize an elderly woman to coerce her into changing her will. That's textbook elder abuse. The only reason we're not discussing criminal charges is because the victim's daughter has chosen to be merciful." The ruling was swift and decisive. The fraudulent will was invalidated. The real will was recognized as legitimate. All property would be transferred back to me immediately, along with attorney fees and court costs. Marcus didn't look at me as we left the courthouse. His lawyer handed him a business card, probably a criminal defense attorney, I realized. Even without my pressing charges, the judge had indicated she might refer the matter to the prosecutor's office. Outside, Amanda shook my hand. "Congratulations, Sarah. You fought for what was right and won." But victory felt quieter than I'd expected. This wasn't just about winning. It was about family, about betrayal, about the complicated legacy of grief and love that tied us to the people and places that shaped us. That evening, I stood in the farmyard watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson. The land stretched out before me, 100 acres of Iowa farmland that had been my great-grandfather's dream, my grandfather's pride, my parents' life work. Now it was mine to protect. Spring arrived early that year, bringing with it the familiar rhythms of planting season. I'd spent the winter making repairs to the house and barn, learning the business side of farming and planning for the future. Tom had been right. This place wasn't just my inheritance, it was my identity. The legal battles were finally over. Marcus had avoided criminal charges by agreeing to stay away from me and the property. We hadn't spoken since the courthouse, and I suspected we never would again. That loss hurt more than I'd expected, but I was learning to live with it. I'd hired Jake Morrison, a young man from town whose family had farmed until the economy forced them to sell. He understood the land, respected it, and shared my vision for sustainable agriculture. We were converting portions of the farm to organic production, targeting local markets and restaurants that valued quality over quantity. The financial projections looked promising, but more importantly, the work felt right. Every morning when I stepped onto the porch and looked across the fields, I felt Mom's presence. Not in any mystical sense, but in the practical ways she'd shaped my understanding of this place, how to read the soil, when to plant, how to work with the seasons rather than against them. I'd kept her letter on the kitchen table all winter, the one that said, "The farm belongs to the one who loves it." She'd been right, of course. Love wasn't enough by itself. It took hard work, financial planning, and probably a fair amount of luck. But love was the foundation that made everything else possible. Thank you all for listening to my story. It's been quite a journey from that devastating funeral to standing here on land that's truly mine. I'd love to know where you're listening from. Please share your location in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more tales of family, farming, and finding your way home. Until next time, take care.